Once upon a time, powerful entities called the Titans once ruled the universe, but their reign was soon ended by their own children, who created a giant monster called the Kraken to destroy their parents. The victors began to call themselves gods, and their leader became the Lord of the Sky. However, through intrigue and deception, his younger brother Hades was forced to live and suffer in hell. Over time, he created humanity in his own image so that humans could worship the gods, thereby granting them immortality and unlimited power. But then people became dissatisfied, began to doubt their creators, and finally rebelled against the heavens. Far away in the middle of the ocean, a fisherman discovered a coffin floating on the water. He pulled it onto the boat and saw the body of a woman and her newborn child who were still miraculously alive. The man decided to raise the child as his own son, and the boy grew into a young man named Perseus. Father and son sailed to the city of Argo, where they saw a giant statue of Gut standing tall on the sea. But the father quickly realized something was wrong. An army was destroying the statue from the base. The giant statue toppled off the cliff and into the sea, creating violent waves while the soldiers celebrated their victory. However, the sky suddenly darkened and countless winged creatures rushed out of the ocean to attack mortals who dared to insult the gods. The soldiers tried to resist but were no match for the flying demons, who were quickly killed one by one. The creatures then merged to take the form of Hades. The god saw the boat of the father and son fishermen and rushed forward to throw the boat into the deep sea. Perseus was lucky to escape, but his family was trapped inside, submerged in water. He tried to swim to save his father but could do nothing but watch them suffocate in despair. With no other choice, Perseus rose to the surface, hugged the ship's debris and cried in pain. At the same time on Mount Olympus, Zeus realized that humanity had turned against the gods, making him angry at that betrayal. Hades appeared and convinced his brother to allow him to punish humans. The god Apollo advised them that they needed human prayers to maintain immortality. But Zeus still agreed with Hades' plan that humanity needed to know fear to remember the god's love. Elsewhere, Perseus was rescued by the soldiers of Argo and brought back to the city. When they returned to the palace, they reported to King Cepheus that the rebellion against the gods had succeeded despite many losses. The people sow in victory, and the king declares that a new era has begun where the gods will no longer hold the fate of mankind. Princess Andromeda warned them about arrogance, believing that the gods would severely punish them for this arrogant act. But the queen just smiled and said that we are the gods now. Suddenly, the light in the palace went out and a cloud of black smoke gathered in the middle of the room. The mysterious entity began to absorb all the soldiers, lifting them into the air and then holding them down one by one, while Perseus strangely remained standing. A huge cloud of smoke appeared to form Hades, and the god was delighted that this man could resist his power. Hades flew towards Queen Argo, draining her life force in just a few seconds, turning her into a dry corpse. He declared that he would release the Kraken to destroy the city within 10 days at the time of the eclipse, unless they sacrificed Princess Andromeda to atone for insulting the gods. Before leaving, Hades deliberately revealed that Perseus was actually the son of Zeus and that it was that god who was the true cause of all the upcoming disasters. Immediately, Perseus was captured by soldiers and their leader tortured him, demanding that he reveal how to undo the curse. But Perseus was completely clueless like everyone else. Not long after, Perseus was visited by a woman named Io, who seemed to know all about his past and confirmed that he was a demigod. Before he was born, King Acrisius once dared to rebel against the gods and lead his army to attack Mount Olympus, but instead of destroying him, he chose a much more terrible punishment. The god transformed into Acrisius and approached the queen, then engaged in a brutal forced fondling. When the real king returned to his room, it was too late. In anger, Acrisius ordered his wife and newborn child to be executed. But before he could throw the coffin into the sea, a ray of lightning caused the king to turn into a hideous monster cursed to suffer eternal pain. Io tells Perseus that his power as a demigod makes him the only one who can destroy the Kraken. If the monster is killed, Hades will also weaken because that creature was created from his own body. Realizing this was his only chance to avenge his family, Perseus decided to join Draco's army. They planned to find witches, who were said to know all the secrets in the world, to find a way to kill the Kraken. Meanwhile, Hades finds Acrisius living in seclusion in the city's sewers. He said that his son was still alive and asked Acrisius to become his weapon of revenge. Hades blew evil black gas into Acrisius, giving him terrible power and promising to destroy him if Acrisius killed his son. At the same time, Perseus and his soldiers entered a forest, where he felt a magical light calling his name. It turned out that he had given him a magical sword forged from the sky that shined brightly with unparalleled power. Perseus refused the gift because he hated the gods, they had caused his family to die miserably. Soon Perseus encountered a herd of winged horses flying before him. Before he could admire that beauty, a giant horse with black wings landed behind him, causing him to fall in fear. The creature opened its giant wings in both majesty and fear. Io appears behind Perseus and explains that it is Pegasus, the mythical creature sent by the gods to help him destroy the Kraken. However, the conversation was interrupted by a terrifying scream from afar. Perseus rushed to the spot and found that Acrisius had killed 2 soldiers. The monster rushed to attack Perseus, knocking him down the hillside, then chased him like a bloodthirsty predator. Acrisius jumped high and tried to hit the ground with terrifying strength that almost crushed Perseus. He tried to counterattack with his sword, but the monster was too strong and bit Perseus's arm, making him scream in pain. Luckily, Perseus was able to escape while the soldiers rushed to support, but they were all quickly defeated by the terrible power of Acrisius. The monster grabbed Perseus's head and was about to finish him off when Draco was able to cut off its hand to save the hero's life. Realizing that the enemy was injured, Perseus and his comrades chased Acrisius into the ruins, but they did not know that the severed hand was transforming into a giant scorpion. The group of soldiers split up to search and one team successfully ambushed Acrisius, causing Acrisius to fall. But they quickly realized the ground began to move and giant claws floated up from the escaping Acrisius soups. Immediately afterwards, giant scorpions emerged from underground and attacked fiercely. The warriors were overwhelmed, many were pierced by scorpion tails and thrown away. While the monster wasn't paying attention, Draco took the opportunity to jump on the back of a giant scorpion and stabbed 2 sword blades into its back, determined to fight to the end. One of the soldiers threw a spear to Draco, allowing him to use the weapon to pierce the giant scorpion's body, finally killing one of the ferocious creatures. At the same time, Perseus attacked the other monster in anger but was knocked to the ground by its claws. The scorpion grabbed him and slammed into the stone pillar, intending to kill him, but Io promptly rushed in and cut off the monster's tail before it could deliver the finishing blow. The scorpion roared in anger and rushed to attack Io, forcing her to flee into a ruined structure while it continuously smashed to kill her. Luckily, Perseus was able to rescue her at the last moment and the two fled in desperation with the monster still chasing close behind. Realizing that there was no way out, Perseus pushed Io away and prepared to confront the giant monster alone. The scorpion rushed forward with full force, collapsing the structure and falling to the ground below. Everyone looked in horror, thinking that Perseus had been swallowed, but then he tore open the scorpion's belly from the inside, killing it as soon as he escaped, leaving the whole team extremely stunned. Before everyone could celebrate their victory, other soldiers ran in and shouted. More scorpions were slithering out from behind the hills surrounding them from the side. When the monsters were about to attack, they suddenly stood motionless and mysterious chanting sounded from afar. Draco immediately recognized the people who appeared as the Jinn, the enemy they had fought many years ago. But Perseus believes that they are allies because they stopped the monsters. It's really quick to tame giant scorpions and turn them into means of transportation. At first the soldiers hesitated, but then they realized this was the only way to make the trip before the eclipse. Thanks to the power of the scorpions, the group easily crossed the desert, eventually arriving at the residence of 3 dangerous witches. The group climbed the mountain when darkness fell, carefully entering the center of the mountain peak. Not long after, hideous creatures without eyes appeared. They were witches and they knew exactly what the warriors were coming for. They demanded payment for their knowledge and then rushed in to attack. But Perseus quickly snatched their only eye, threatening to destroy it if he did not tell them how to destroy the Kraken. Pressed, the witches are forced to reveal that only Medusa can kill the giant monster, as her gaze can turn any flesh creature into a demon. After hearing this, Perseus threw his eye to the ground and intended to leave, but the witches prophesied that he would die on this journey no matter how hard he tried. Hearing that terrifying prediction, many people in the group gave up, leaving only loyal warriors and the leader of the Jinn clan, who wished to take revenge on the gods for exiling his people in the desert. As the group descended the mountain, Perseus encountered a stranger approaching from behind but quickly realized it was Zod. The god said that Perseus would not be able to defeat the Kraken or defeat Hades because of the witch's prophecy. Zod wanted to protect his son, inviting him to heaven to live with the gods, but Perseus firmly refused, choosing to live and die as a human. Not wanting to see his son fail, Zod gave him a golden coin so he could get through the journey safely because entrance to Medusa's lair required a large offering. After crossing the desolate lands, the group came to a giant hole in the ground where a ghostly, mist-covered river meandered below. Perseus took his father's golden coin, and leader Jinn threw it into the water, chanting a spell to bribe the rich man to take them across the underworld. Very soon, countless dead souls floated up from the water pulling a giant boat towards the group and an evil demon appeared to welcome them on board. They cross a haunted river where molten rocks pour from the earth's core until they finally see a clearing. The soldiers continued forward, stepping on rough rocky ground, and eventually reached the entrance to Medusa's lair, where only men were allowed, and the demon was forced to stay behind to wait for their return. The warriors entered the lava-covered cave, where countless statues of petrified men stood as tragic witnesses, all victims of Medusa's power. From deep inside the cave came a woman's wild laughter, making them realize the monster was near. Suddenly a series of arrows were fired from the darkness, causing many warriors to fall into fiery pits of lava, while Perseus tried to hold on and save Jin from death. Draco ordered his warriors to split up and pursue Medusa to defeat her, while Perseus threw the Jin ashore and saved himself. The two remaining warriors tried to avoid the monster's deadly gaze while chasing it, but were quickly turned into stone statues and shattered on the ground. Perseus and Jin desperately ran away, avoiding the monster's arrows to escape the hunt of the female hunter of hell. He told his teammates to wait and decided to lure Medusa out, then rushed through the rocks, causing the angry monster to chase him with the intention of killing him. Perseus dodged the fierce attacks, while Draco watched from afar waiting for an opportunity to ambush. Finally, Perseus led Medusa back close to Jin, where he slashed with his sword and was quickly entangled by Medusa's tail. The monster tried to turn Jin into stone but failed because his body no longer had flesh. Jin laughed at the monster and then decided to detonate himself, causing a giant explosion that threw Medusa and Perseus far away. Before the monster could recover, Draco jumped down from above and smashed a large rock on the cave ceiling, causing it to fall onto Medusa's tail and pin it to the ground. The monster turned Draco to stone, but that action gave Perseus the opportunity to peer through the reflective shield to determine its location. Medusa rushed forward while Perseus closed his eyes and jumped towards the monster and slashed his neck with his sword. The fatal slash severed the monster's head, causing Medusa's head to fall to the ground, and the battle ended. Perseus was the only survivor who carried Medusa's head out of the cave. But as soon as he stepped outside, he saw Io Acrisius stabbed from behind and thrown into the cliff like a tattered doll. Perseus rushed forward to attack his friend's killer but was quickly knocked back and fell to the ground. He counterattacked fiercely and stabbed Acrisius in the legs, but the monster's strength was so great that he was thrown away like a gust of wind. When he saw Perseus was about to die, he decided to use the weapons of the gods, jumped into the air and tried to deliver a fatal blow that forced Acrisius back in pain. The monster was quickly overwhelmed and then stabbed through the stomach by Perseus, causing its body to turn back into human form and fall into the abyss. Perseus ran to Io trying to save her, but Io told him to stop and go stop the Kraken from saving the people of Argo before the eclipse happened. Io reassured him that everything would be okay and then turned to dust in Perseus' hands. Before he could mourn, Pegasus flew down from the sky, giving Perseus the opportunity to return to Argo to prevent the impending disaster. As the eclipse approached, the sea surface began to crack, spewing out countless giant tentacles that rushed toward the city, creating violent waves that rolled across the ocean. The people realized that the monster was approaching, so they brought their princess to the altar. Giant tentacles floated up from the seabed and slammed into the city with terrifying destructive power, crushing everything in their path. At the same time, the palace on Mount Olympus shook violently and Hades finally revealed to her that he had deceived all the gods to strengthen himself. Because the Kraken was created from Hades' body, each time the monster wreaked havoc his dark energy increased while the other gods grew weaker. On the other side, Perseus rode Pegasus and flew close to the Kraken, preparing to kill the beast. But Hades discovered the demigod's presence and immediately turned into countless demon shadows and rushed to attack. The demons stole Medusa's head, forcing Perseus to chase them into the city, where giant beasts were slaughtering innocent civilians. He tried to knock down the pursuing monsters, then continued to chase to regain Medusa's head at all costs. Immediately after that, the Kraken floated out of the water showing its giant body, and Princess Andromeda cried out in horror. Perseus still stubbornly pursued the demon with the head of Medusa, forcing it to fly into the air, almost being grabbed by the Kraken. He jumped off the horse's back and clung to the demon and fell with it, crashing into the buildings and landing right behind the princess. Kraken approached Andromeda, opening his giant mouth to swallow her in one bite, but Perseus was able to regain Medusa's head and rush to face the monster. He pulled out Medusa's head and turned its deadly gaze towards the Kraken, causing the giant creature to begin to petrify while screaming. Its giant body gradually froze, its heavy arm fell, crushing the entire row of houses below and dozens of people. It fell into the ocean and into the cold water while the Kraken's giant body crumbled and shattered into thousands of pieces of stone. Soon, Hades appeared before Perseus, vowing to avenge the monster's slaying. But Perseus resisted and the lightning bolt shot straight at him, creating a dazzling explosion that sent Hades falling back into the underworld. Perseus immediately jumped into the sea and swam towards the princess, grabbed her hand and pulled her out of the water to save her from death. They both swam to safety, exhausted but still alive. Andromeda gratefully asked Perseus to become her husband for saving her life, but he refused, saying he did not wish to become king. After bringing the princess back to the people of Argo, Perseus appeared and offered a reward. The supreme god thanked his son for saving the human world and the heavens, then revived Io, allowing Perseus to live forever with the woman he loved.